There's not a lot of people here.
Well, of course, we've gotten to know Jim over the years.
Good evening and welcome to Carnegie Town Hall. This meeting of the City Planning Commission will begin with a few introductory remarks. The City of Sioux Falls Planning Commission serves as an advisory board to the City Council. It is the responsibility of the Planning Commission to consider and make recommendations on land use and zoning matters. Actions taken tonight on conditional use permits are final unless appealed to the City Council in writing within 5 days. Any recommendations made on preliminary subdivision plan requests tonight will be referred to the City Council for final action at the third council meeting of this month, or at the first council meeting of the next month if associated with a rezoning or major amendment. Any recommendations made on rezoning requests, major amendments, future land use amendments, or ordinance amendments tonight will be referred to the City Council for final action at the first council meeting of next month. Council meetings are held at 7 p.m. here in the Carnegie Town Hall and are televised. The Planning Commission will first approve the consent and then the regular agenda. In order to place certain non-controversial items on the Commission's consent agenda, planning staff and the Planning Commission apply the following criteria. First, the request conforms with the SHAPE Sioux Falls 2035 Comprehensive Plan. Second, planning staff recommends approval of the request. Third, there are no audience members present or written comments received in opposition to the request. And fourth, the application meets all conditions and requirements of the Sioux Falls zoning ordinance. By approving the consent agenda, the Commission is approving the items on consent. Therefore, upon approval of the agenda, those members of the public in attendance for those items are free to leave. For the regular agenda, the following normal public hearing procedure will be followed for each item. By first requesting planning staff to present a brief report on that item. Second, the petitioner or a representative will be requested to come forward to make a statement or answer questions. After the petitioner has spoken, anyone from the audience who wishes to address the agenda item shall be recognized. Then the Planning Commission will discuss the matter further and take appropriate action. We ask that anyone addressing the Planning Commission move to the podium microphone and identify themselves for the record. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, we ask that you either turn off or please silence your electronic devices. This meeting is being televised on CityLink and will be rebroadcast Friday at 7 p.m., Saturday at 10 a.m., and Wednesday at 1 a.m. Thank you for your cooperation.
Good evening and welcome to Carnegie Town Hall. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to emphasize a couple of items first, and one is please silence all cell phones and electronic devices. And two is in an effort to have sufficient time to hear from the audience members, we ask that when you come to the podium, please identify yourself and state your address for the records. And then limit your comments to 5 minutes, and please ensure you are delivering new testimony to the commissioners. At this time, we'll approve the consent agenda. Denise, could you please read items on the consent agenda 1 through 11?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item 1, approval of April 6, 2016 minutes of regular meeting. Item 2, April plats. Item 3, 4333 2016 rezoned from the AG Agricultural District to the RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density and C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar Districts for allowed forms located at the southeast corner of East 41st Street and South Sparta Avenue. Item 4, 4342 2016 rezoned from the AG Agriculture to the CN Conservation RA3 Apartment Residential High Density LW Live Work and C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District for allowed forms located at the southeast corner of East 69th Street and South Beale Avenue. Item 5, 4468 2016 rezoned from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the O Office District located at 400 South Cleveland Avenue. Item 6, 4475 2016 rezoned from the AG Agriculture District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District located north and south of West 65th Street and east of T. Ellis Road. Item 7, 4481 2016 rezoned from the LW Live Work District to the CN Conservation District located at south of East 57th Street and west of South Greystone Avenue. Item 8, 4494 2016 rezoned from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the I-1 Light Industrial District located at 1400 North Cleveland Avenue. Item 9, 4374 2016 preliminary subdivision plan for Phase 1 of the Beale 2 addition located south of West 69th Street and east of Beale Avenue. Item 10, 4399 2016 preliminary subdivision plan for Phase 2 of Majestic Meadows addition located south of East 41st Street and east of South Sparta Avenue. Item 11, 4488 2016 preliminary subdivision plan for Jepson's addition located north and south of West 65th Street and east of T. Ellis Road.
Mr. Chair, I have to step down.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. Are there any objections from the audience on the items 1 through 11 on the consent agenda? Are there any objections from the commissioners on items 1 through 11? No objections. Seeing none, I look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, the same sign. Motion passes. The consent agenda has been approved. If you are here for any of these items, 1 through 11, you are free to leave. Now we'll move on to the regular agenda. I need a motion to approve the regular agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the regular agenda signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Regular agenda passes.
Mr. Chair, I need to step down for item 12.
Thank you.
Item 12, 4485, 2016, rezone from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District located at 3301 South Garfield Avenue.
Jason Bieber, representing Planning and Building Services. The owner of the existing Home Federal Bank building is looking at constructing a small addition and changing the use from a single tenant, which is currently the Home Federal Bank, to a multi-tenant building. This will then increase the parking requirements from the 1 to 300 to the 1 to 200 square feet, necessitating the proposed rezoning for the additional parking area to the north. The concept plan does indicate the required 10-foot front yard setbacks. The proposed parking lot consists of 20 parking spaces with direct access to the existing parking lot of Home Federal Bank. The required 20-foot buffer yard on the north and the 10-foot buffer yard on the east side setback is indicated on this concept plan. Several trees are also indicated. However, the number of landscape units and 4-foot berm or 6-foot fence is not indicated on the plan. Staff feels the C2 request does not meet the proper land use transitions as stated in the Sioux Falls, Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan. This stretch of West 41st Street is predominantly commercial uses. In the first row of parcels immediately adjacent to West 41st Street, as you can kind of see by the zoning map. The smaller commercial use transitions north to either an O office or to an RA apartment residential district, and then finally to the existing residential homes to the north of these. Staff has suggested and indicated support to the applicant for an O office zoning district with a small office use and an associated parking lot on this lot. Staff feels that this is a more appropriate transition from this parcel to the existing single-family uses to the north. Finally, this would prevent future commercial encroachment along the stretch of West 41st Street into the existing residential neighborhood. Complaints arising from the homeowners about traffic, parking, noise, light, and smell impacts from the commercial uses haven't been shown to be diminished. If the rezoning of this property is approved, the applicant can construct the parking lot and combine it with the existing retail use to the south. If this rezoning is denied, the parcel will be continued to be rezoned RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential and will continue to allow the single family or a two-family use on the lot. Staff feels the rezoning request to C2 Commercial does not meet the land use transition requirement as stated in the comprehensive plan for this stretch of West 41st Street. Further, the request would allow commercial uses to creep farther to the north into the existing single-family residential neighborhood. Therefore, staff does recommend denial of this rezoning, but has stated that we could support office use as a transition to the single-family residential district. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any questions of staff?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Jason, so just so I can understand everything that's going on here, he's adding to the building that's currently there in the C2 and wants to expand a parking lot to the north into that where he wants to change the zoning, correct?
Correct.
With the additions to the building, does he have the required parking on his site as it is?
The site plan that we had worked with previously, I hadn't exactly looked at this one. We were able to work with him to get the amount of parking on the site. The issue that he was running into is with the proposed addition that did kick in buffer yard requirements since that was an existing single-family house to the north, which would have eliminated parking in that drive aisle on the north side. That's where we tried to suggest an office use would eliminate that buffer yard, but still give a proper transition to the single-family neighborhood.
And if it's an office use, can he construct the parking lot he has shown here, or does he have to do something different?
He could construct a small office building and associated parking lot, but not just a specific parking lot for this retail use.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Thank you, Jason. Is the petitioner here?
Good evening. My name's John Taylor. I'm an attorney. I represent 2700 West LLC, which is the owner of this parcel, and its principal, Dustin Haber. As Mr. Bieber discussed, 2700 LLC wishes to expand the current footprint of the Home Federal Bank building. Just to clarify, it already is a two-tenant structure. Home Federal has reduced its footprint within the interior space and is primarily located in the western third of the building. If you look at the drawing that's up on the screen, you'll see that triangle that's kind of delineated out. There's a concrete facade that runs along the sidewalk east and west and north and south. And Mr. Haber wants to expand the building of what is labeled tenant space B to be inside that existing footprint. And by doing that, it does affect the parking requirements. We had a community meeting on April 13th, which was widely attended by residents in the neighborhood. And we had over a dozen neighbors show up and visit with us about their concerns related to the property. There were three chief concerns that were brought forth by neighbors. First, they were concerned that a casino would go there, and that's not going to be any sort of tenant to occupy the structure. They're concerned about payday loan centers, alcohol establishments, bars, things like that, and that's not going to be any sort of proposed tenant because of Home Federal has the master lease on that property and would prohibit any sort of those activities. The second concern is related to the Perkins restaurant, which is right across the street. Numerous neighbors expressed that on weekends, particularly on Sunday, the brunch crowd overflows that parking lot, and people end up parking all the way up to the next street on Garfield, both sides of the street, and it really ties up the neighborhood. And so the neighbors expressed they were in agreement that it would benefit the neighborhood by having an additional parking area, particularly on the weekends, for some overflow into that space. And third, the neighboring property owner, on the drawing that you see, that parking lot area is currently a duplex. It's zoned RD1. It's a front half and back half duplex. The mirror building is right next door to it to the north, and that's owned by Ruth Brown and her husband Delvin Brown. They live in Hartford. They own the next door building, and they own two buildings across the street, two other duplexes. And when we showed Mrs. Brown this drawing, she was very excited by it because of the additional buffer space that's created with the parking lot on the north end there. Right now there's 7 feet between the two duplexes, and with this project, it would give her an increase of about 13 feet when you get the setback off the house and add in another 20, or when you work the math out there, that's how it ends up. So she was very agreeable to that. And she offered to be here tonight, but all her kids are in town. She's an elderly woman. She's got 4 kids. They're having a big party out at their house in Hartford. She offered, if the commission would like to hear from her, we can dial her in and get her thoughts. Would you like me to do that? I certainly can. She's probably the most affected landowner by this project. We'll come back to that. I got a couple other things to comment on before we get to any questions. Revisiting Mr. Bieber's recommendation from the city's perspective of supporting a zoning change to office would actually be detrimental to the neighboring landowner in terms of setback. If I understand it correctly, a level A landscaping plan would have to be submitted, which is a 10-foot setback and the corresponding 4 or 6-foot berm and fence combination. With a C2 use, that provides an additional 10 foot of setback, and along the north edge in that buffer space, the current plan is to install trees as you see it, and Mrs. Brown has asked for a 6-foot fence along the north, west, and east sides of the parking area to alleviate any pedestrian traffic across into that neighboring property. And also, if it were zoned office, that effectively forces Mr. Haber to build another office building atop that property, and it is going to throw the parking requirement out of sync and potentially put additional traffic in that neighborhood with another business in that office area. So what this does is it by changing it to C2 and put a parking lot there, benefits the neighborhood, benefits the landowner, reduces the amount of on-street traffic, particularly on the weekends. Are there any questions I can answer?
Are you finished then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Taylor from the commissioners?
Well, as I read this, that north parcel that you're showing the extra parking in, it doesn't appear to have an extra driveway. It would still use the primary 2 driveways that you already have on the Garfield. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this? Please come forward, state your name and address.
My name is Scott Adams. I reside at 3303 South Garfield, which is the area that is being discussed right now. I was not invited to this meeting on April 13th. I knew nothing about it. My neighbor, who is also a tenant at the same property, contacted me to ask me if I knew anything about this meeting. I knew nothing about it. She witnessed people going to the meeting. In my contact with Ruth Brown, she was very adamant against this. She may have had a change of heart, which is her prerogative. She's a property owner, I'm just a tenant. And my reason for being here is simple curiosity, trying to find out what happens to us. And I have no property rights, obviously, but I just thought it was curious tonight that this meeting was so well attended and we knew nothing about it. So I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Any questions, excuse me, any questions for Mr. Adams? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to speak on this?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question of staff, or maybe one or two? So for Mr. Adams' question about notification, the notification gets sent to the property owner. That's correct, right?
Correct.
Okay. So letters would have gone out to anybody who owned property in that area?
Yep.
And second, so as I struggle with John's thoughts on having to build a building on that area if it gets turned into office in order to make it the parking lot he wants. So we can, as a planning commission now, put conditions on rezones, correct?
Yes, you can recommend conditions for the
We
rezone.
could recommend conditions. So, and if we were to put could we recommend a condition that there were no structures constructed on the site, that it would, so we knew it would stay office, and maybe the concern that it was going to, or it would stay parking lot, so the concern that it might be a casino or something else in the future could be negated? Is that something we can do?
Good question. as Jason just said. I'm Jeff Schmidt, representing planning staff. The conditions that we've been supporting on rezonings have been bulk regulations. And again, I'm going to stall a little bit for our attorney, Danny Brown, to come up here too, maybe. But to rezone this property, and go back to your zoning exhibit, Jason, we're not talking about the C2 property along 41st Street. You're only talking about the one C2 property. So to allow this property to be zoned and then not giving them a building eligibility, I think is illegal. So you'd say, we're going to rezone this property and give you a building right, but you can't build anything on it, I think is incorrect. Could you say, we're going to allow it to be zoned to C2, but here's your setbacks, here's your building heights, here's your lot dimensions, but you have a right to build a building there? Yes. But to say you have the right to have C2 zoning without putting building on, that property owner is going to come back and say, you took away all my rights. On the flip side, the other things are the same that the property owners in this area have to understand. We're not approving a parking lot on this site. We're not approving an office building on this site. This is what you're approving tonight. Do you want it to be RD1, or are you approving it to be C2, which could be anything on that form? Any C2 commercial use is allowed there now or in 50 years. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, could you help us out on this a little bit?
Danny Brown, Assistant City Attorney. As far as what limitations or conditions you can put on a rezone request, the limitations have to be limited to certain uses typically eligible within that zoning district. So if a use was typically allowed and you want to make a condition to eliminate a use, our ordinance allows that. So if you wanted to make that recommendation, you could. If after further research we thought it was something that couldn't be done, we'd certainly notify council of that legal opinion if and when it came before city council.
So in theory, you could eliminate all uses except parking?
I think you can.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I didn't have any other questions. But
Yeah, please come forward. Yeah.
On behalf of 2700 LLC and Mr. Haber, they would accept a C2 zoning change with a restriction limiting the use to a parking lot for to benefit the highest and best use of that southern property. So they would accept the restriction of that character. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other testimony from the public? All right. Testimony is closed. I need a motion to, I guess the request is for denial.
Mr. Chair, for discussion purposes, I'll make a motion to approve item 12.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Mr. Chair, I'd offer an amendment to add the stipulation that all other, I don't know how exactly to word that, but so parking lot is the only allowed use, if that is the correct way to word that. I don't know. Danny? Would that be the correct way to word an amendment, to have parking as the only allowed use? Okay, so I'd offer that as an amendment.
Second that.
The use that you probably would be limiting it to would be accessory outside parking.
Okay.
So you could say, I want to limit it to only accessory outside parking within the RE3 form.
I'll say that.
All right, motion's been made and seconded with the condition that this is zone C2 with an accessory use only.
Accessory parking.
Right now, it's the amendment for that, right?
With that amendment. Any other discussion?
We have to vote on the amendment first.
Right, but first we got to discuss it.
The amendment, yeah. So as far as discussion goes, I understand about creeping C2 into neighborhoods, and I think if it is approved here and goes to city council, it's probably a tough sell for them. But having it be a parking lot, I don't think is that bad versus an office in a building versus just off-site accessory parking. Seems okay to me.
I agree with that. I think that helped the neighborhood a little bit to have some off-street parking, because I know how that is during the weekend. It gets really busy over there. But again, I don't want C2 to start creeping up all the way up. So I think that having that tied to it, that it'll help that. So.
Well, the other thing I look at is, right now the building has a pretty good size footprint. I know they need some extra space for a second tenant. The option to go with an O use would mean probably a third building and a third, or really a second building and a third tenant theoretically. That seems to be a little bit of a challenge. And I know that's not really a central piece of our consideration, but when you think about the final effects and what that has of an effect on zoning, I think there's some value in this particular option.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me. I support the amendment because to me it makes good sense. It's a good compromise. And I'll vote for the amendment and also vote for the original motion.
Okay, any more discussion? Seeing none, I need we'll vote on the amendment first for item number 12 with zone to C2 for accessory use only. Pardon?
Accessory off-site parking.
Off-site parking.
Okay, accessory off-site parking only.
Yep.
So I need, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed? Same sign. Amendment passes. Now we'll vote on the rezone. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Item 13, 4464, 2016, conditional use permit for Stealth Communications Tower located at 2210 West 69th Street.
The applicant here is Kurt Walter, and he is requesting to construct up to a 100-foot telecommunication tower. The proposed tower will be located just north of this existing strip center, west of the 69th and Western intersection. Verizon proposes to install a stealth communication tower facility on the property owned by Van Buskert's company. The structure will be 86 foot tall, 91 feet with the lightning rod at the top. Stealth monopole design. A 9-foot by 14-foot Verizon equipment shelter would be placed on the platform at the base of the facility. The entire lease space will be surrounded by a wrought iron fence with wood privacy slats in it. And because the application has provided clarity to indicate the location, nature, and extent of the work proposed, staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any questions of staff on this item? Thank you, Jason. Is the petitioner here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, my name is Kurt Walter. I do represent Verizon Wireless on their ever expanding plan to make better coverage in Sioux Falls. We're looking for another site here. There's a lot of residential, there's commercial in this particular area. We figured this was the best location that we could find. It's on the backside of a commercial strip mall, basically, right next to a garbage dumpster and a rendering box. So thought this was a good spot. Worked for about a year with Jason here and replatting the property. I think that's all been approved. Getting the final I's dotted and T's crossed and all that fun stuff. Be here to answer any questions you guys have.
Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Chair? Oh.
No, go ahead. Ladies first.
I was just curious. I drove the site and I saw that there were some water towers near the area and things like that, and wondered, did you consider any existing options in this location other than?
Yes. The real trick here is Verizon has really good coverage in town. What we're getting into is with all the new technology, the LTE and everything that Verizon has, it's more of a capacity. So I don't handle all of Verizon's real estate in Sioux Falls, but more than likely we're already on that water tower. So that wouldn't work. We had about a 2-block search ring that we needed to be in, either this side of the street or the south side of 69th. So we've looked at anything that we could possibly put the structure on, any existing rooftops, anything like that. Nothing seemed to work. We need as high as possible to get good coverage, get over tree lines, get over sight lines, all that fun stuff that needs to be done. So this is the only thing that could give us that height that we needed. So yes, we have looked at everything that we could possibly do, but there was nothing there that could even come close to our height requirements.
All right. I did have one more question. When I drove around, I thought just the buildings, the closeness of the buildings within the vicinity. Is the falling down of the tower an issue at all anymore?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, you can Google anything and find something, but most of those would be old. The ones I've seen are old, ancient, self-support type stuff. These are designed, if they would fail, up in the Northland here, we have to be strong enough to have, I could be wrong in the exact specifics, either a 1/4-inch ice all over everything or 1/2-inch ice, I'm not sure, with like 75-mile-an-hour straight wind. So they're designed to handle pretty much anything, an ice tornado, basically. If they would fail, they would bend over like a straw. So it's not like they would fall like a tree and land on anything.
All right.
They're engineered that way. Hopefully we never have to see one.
Thank you.
That took care of my question.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Walden? Thank you. Does anyone from the public want to speak on this item?
Yep, there's one.
Hi, my name is Scott Munsinger. I have a dental office kind of on that area. I'm probably 2 lots to the west of that. My building's kind of angled on that curve furthest to the left over there. My waiting room is, the arrow that points there is the direction of my waiting room, which basically faces right towards this tower. Our building was built about 5 years ago. Pretty much all the buildings in that view were all built at the time. 2 more were built on the side over there to the left on that picture. And then the commercial space, the retail, hadn't been built yet, but we knew that was going to be there. There were a lot of rules and restrictions and covenants when I built my property there, which I liked, partly for the protection of the residents that are right behind me. I had to do a light study to make sure that my lights wouldn't be annoying in the parking lot. So there were a lot of rules there. And there were a lot of covenants in terms of signage and how the buildings would look. And it does have kind of a look there. It's a really nice area. You had driven over there. There's not even overhead power lines in that area. It just looks really nice and clean. Now that everything's finished, it kind of came as a surprise to us in an area where I couldn't figure out where they were even going to put a tower. And now when I know where it goes, it makes even less sense, kind of tucked right up against that building. But to have a 100-foot tower right there just doesn't fit in with the overall look. I've had some residents talk to me about it. Same thing, they had the same concerns I did. It just seems like an odd spot for it. It doesn't fit in with the aesthetic of the entire area, which is now basically completed. We really like it there, it looks great. So I would oppose it. I think for the same reason, if I wanted to put a 100-foot sign that said dentist vertically, there would probably be some opposition to it. It seems like a 100-foot tower kind of put right in the middle there. It just doesn't fit in with the area. Across the street is an empty lot right now. There's all kinds of overhead power lines and all kinds of stuff there. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I would object to having this placed where it is, and I've heard some other conversations of people in that area that would see it, that oppose it, basically. So I would ask that this be rejected. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve for discussion. Item 13.
I'll make a motion to approve for discussion.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
You know, I think I had the similar concern as far as just the aesthetics, the look, the feel of that office area. And, you know, the challenge I have with it is these need to go somewhere. So where do you put them? And that's probably the biggest struggle I have, you know, not that this is the perfect location, but I'm not sure there is a perfect location for these anywhere in town, but there's a need for them, and in order for us to continue growing, these towers need to be in our community. So that's, I understand the concern, but I also understand that we need them.
Anyone else? All right. Well, I got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. Item 13 passes.
Item 14, 4482, 2016, conditional use permit for on-sale alcohol within 500 feet of a sensitive use located at 2401 West 12th Street.
Excuse me. The applicant here is Thomas Thompson. He would like to reopen the old Jackpot Casino at this location at the southwest corner and name it Joker's Casino 2. And he is getting his on-sale alcohol license to serve wine and beer to the patrons. The proposed on-sale alcohol beverage establishment meets the criteria of the comprehensive plan. The proposed casino will be identical to the previous casino use in this building, and he is not planning on doing any improvements to the site or construction. Because the application has provided clarity to indicate the location, nature, and extent of the work proposed, staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions of staff? No? Thank you, Jason. Is the petitioner here? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Hi, my name's Steve Rickenbach. I'm actually here on behalf of Tom Thompson. He was unable to make it. I really don't have anything furthermore to say than he has. I can try to answer any questions I can for you, but other than that.
Okay. Any questions from Commissioner? Thank you. Is there anyone from the audience that'd like to speak about this? All right.
Motion for approval?
Second.
Got a motion and approval. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh.
Mr. Chair, I'll just say it seems like it was an existing one, just starting it back up again doesn't seem like a big issue at all.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes. Yes.
All opposed? Item 14 passes.
Item 15, 4509, 2016, conditional use for on-sale alcohol within 500 feet of a sensitive use located at 1701 East 10th Street.
The applicant in this specific application would like to serve beer and wine to a customer of the coffee shop and restaurant. There has been beer and wine served at this establishment for 10-some years. The previous conditional use did have the stipulation of for this applicant only, and now that applicant is looking to transfer and sell the business to this new applicant. And that required the need to get a new conditional use under the current ordinance since they are within 500 feet of a sensitive land use. The coffee shop use is pretty much not changing anything, just like I said, changing owners. So because the application has provided clarity to indicate the nature, location, and extent of the work proposed, staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any questions of staff? No. Thank you, Jason. Is the petitioner here?
Yes, my name is Ezekiel Osman. I was
Closer to the mic, yeah.
My name is Ezekiel Osman. I was the new owner of the showroom. That is why we just transferred the thing on my name.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners? All right, thank you. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak on this?
Hello, my name is Ted Miller. My partners and I have the Taco John's located at 1605 East 10th Street, as well as the property on 1609 East 10th Street. We have an office directly to the south. It's a rental house now. It was our previous office at 211 South Maple, and a shop. And we just recently moved across the street from this property at 100 North Crone, and we're looking at doing a development on that corner with the partners of the historical town square on the corner of 10th and Maple. We decided this was the opportunity to bring this in front of you guys, because for years we've had concerns with this business and the issues that go on there, and we brought it to the police and the city. We've had our building drove through multiple times. The parking, in my opinion, is inadequate. There's 7 to 8 spots for this location. We currently have a renter in the house at 211 South Maple that's talked about moving out, because every day, I mean, and I want to stress this is literally almost an everyday experience, that there's beer bottles and whiskey bottles and condoms, and I mean, it's just, you name it, the street is littered in this area from the ongoing things that go on here. And, you know, it's just our belief, we've invested millions of dollars in this neighborhood and area, and we would like you to seriously consider this request going forward.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Miller?
Thank you.
None?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to speak on this issue? Please come forward, state your name and address, please.
Thank you. Chad Gunvaldston, 100 North Crone, so owners with Ted. I just want to echo the same concerns that Ted just had. Along with future development plans, parking spaces, the limited parking that's there right now, and the potential use of parking that we may want to develop, future leasers, and the disarray and the upkeep of the property that's there. It's a lot of the same things that Ted just said.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to talk about this? Thank you. Name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Alan Geffrey. Address is 1707 East 10th Street. I'm 2 doors to the east of the area in question here. I also own the small rental house on 207 South Highland, directly to the south of my office that opens up into Highland. Over the years, I've been there 20 years. Over the years, I've kind of seen the property on the corner deteriorate. Maybe it's in conjunction with the conditional use permit with the alcohol, I'm not sure. But we've had Monday mornings picking up beer bottles and stuff in my parking lot gets kind of old. My tenants in my rental house behind have had some, no run-ins or anything, but certainly have seen a lot of cars parked back there over the years. Great Life is between myself and the corner there. Things have improved a lot in the last year since they've moved in. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there was a pawn shop that sat empty for 7 or 8 years. Things really went downhill, and the coffee shop took a lot of liberties with parking and using their space over there. I guess that's really all my concern. Looking at that picture there, there's 6 parking spots on the property in question. Sometimes there's a lot of people over there. I'm not sure how many calls there have been with the police or if there's a call log or anything, but I'm sure there's probably some record with too many people in there for the amount of parking that's there. Thank you.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience like to speak on this item? Hearing none, I need a motion and a second.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So, I mean, I appreciate your guys' concerns. Looking at our staff report, the police had no comments on this application and what you're talking about. I think the really nice thing here is you have a new applicant or a new person who's going to be there to work with. And hopefully he's heard some of your concerns, and it might be a great time to start some dialogue to make sure these issues get cleaned up going forward, because again, we have a new owner of the restaurant and the building. I don't know if it's the building or not, but at least the restaurant, and so hopefully you guys can get some things worked out so it's a change for the better and it doesn't keep being an issue for you. So I'm going to support it.
I would echo those remarks. The new owner certainly has an opportunity now to become a very good neighbor and not do some of the things that have caused you a lot of grief over the past few years. And I'm hopeful that that's what's going to happen. Also, like he said, it's now going to also be a restaurant. And so it's a different use in a lot of different ways. So I approve of this motion, and I'm going to vote for it.
Any other discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor of item 15 signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion 15 passes.
Item 16, 4487, 2016, alternative site plan for an alternative landscaping plan located at 605 West 81st Street.
The applicant here is Ryan Reeds. They are proposing to place the required buffer yard on the east side, along the east property line outside of the 10-foot buffer yard setback. And further, instead of the required fence or berm, the applicant is proposing to place additional landscape units to the east of the proposed apartment complex. And the reason for this, there is an existing 15-foot wide drainage easement running along that east property line to get down to this existing detention area, as you can see at the green section to the south. The site has required a level A buffer yard along that east property line, which includes that 10-foot setback, 2-foot berm or 4-foot fence, and 20 units of landscaping for every 100 lineal feet, for a total of 87 landscape units. The alternative plan, the applicant is proposing to do a 15-foot setback to stay outside that drainage easement, 2 deciduous shade trees, 4 6-foot evergreen trees, and roughly 100 shrubs to kind of screen the existing parking lot from any future development to the east, for a total of 145 landscape units, which is roughly 58 more than what's originally required within the level A buffer yard. The applicant is proposing to provide that increased setback and additional landscape units, which should meet the intent of the level A buffer yard along that east property line. Further, the property to the east requires the buffer yard is currently vacant. You can see that it is currently zoned live work, and it's adjacent to some commercial property. Therefore, staff does feel that it probably will develop more of an apartment or office type use that would require a 0 buffer yard. If this application is approved, the applicant can place the required level A buffer yard along the east property line as indicated on this proposed landscape plan. If the application is denied, the applicant is required to place the landscaping in the drainage easement, which would disrupt natural drainage to the detention pond to the south. Because the subject application should meet the intent of the level A buffer yard requirements within the Sioux Falls zoning ordinance, staff does recommend approval of this application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any questions of staff? Thank you, Jason. Is the petitioner here? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Ryan Reens, 2712 South Poplar Drive.
Can you add anything?
Basically, they want us to put cedar fence coming down that east side, and we want to put hedges in there and have it look more natural. Eric Helland owns, we bought this land from him, and he owns the adjoining property, and he agrees with us. He'd rather have green hedges than a cedar fence that would deteriorate, not look as good, and it creates the same or solves the same problem and looks better in our opinion. It'll cost us more, but it'll look way better, and I hope that you approve it.
All right. Any questions? I think it's a great idea. More green is always better.
Yep.
Thank you. Need a motion and a second?
Motion for approval.
Did you get public?
Oh, excuse me. Is there anyone from the public that, thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this issue? Hearing none, thank you.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Second.
Get your mic.
Oh, it's on.
I agree. I think this just seems to make more sense, so I'm in favor of approving it.
I also like how it's pretty obvious the owner worked with the city and some suggestions about things to do to come up with an alternative plan, and that speaks well to the staff of the city as well as the owner's willingness to kind of adjust and make sure that it protects everybody's interests. So it's a good plan.
Mr. Chair, I would just add, this seems like an above and beyond kind of a plan, so
Yeah.
kudos to them.
All right, thank you. All in favor of item 16 signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed, same sign. Item 16 passes.
Item 17, 4490, 2016, alternative site plan for parking reduction alternative plan located at 5100 West 12th Street.
The applicant here is Billion Automotive, and they are, currently rehabbing the old High Roller building, which is roughly 54,700 square feet, and adding a 16,000 square foot addition on the east side. The applicant indicates that the facility will be for motor vehicle repair for Billion trade-in and new cars only. The general public will not take their vehicles here for repair. It'll be strictly for Billion-owned vehicles. The building contains the following areas: 24,500 foot parts storage area, a 15,700 detail car wash area, roughly 12,000 foot body shop, 11,000 in service bays, and about a 4,000 foot retail and office area in the front there along West 12th Street. This ordinance requires one space for every 300 square feet for a total of 236 parking spaces. The applicant's plan indicates that the Billion service location will strictly be for those traded-in vehicles only, that they will have minimal minimal visitors coming besides the 56 employees that they are saying are working on the maximum shift. At the same time, the parking plan does indicate an additional 23 spaces for visitor parking kind of along West 12th Street. That will provide any customers or staff or anyone that's coming there to park. That would be a total of 79 spaces provided on the site with 236 spaces required. The applicant has provided the necessary parking study criteria as indicated in section 160.600, the parking reduction alternative plan of the zoning ordinance. The plan does indicate the maximum number of employees working on the site at one time will be 56. Further limited visitor parking will be needed because only trade-in vehicles and the new vehicles will be worked on at this specific facility. The 79 parking spaces should provide the necessary off-street parking requirements for this land use of this kind. However, the plan is for motor vehicle service only, and it's important to note if the applicant or owner does intend to start selling vehicles at this site, the required parking spaces as indicated in the zoning ordinance, which would be 236 spaces, will be required, or we will have to receive a revised alternative parking plan that will need to come back and approved by Planning Commission. Because the application has provided that necessary parking plan criteria to warrant the reduction of the amount of parking, and the amount of parking should be sufficient for this proposed use of the building, staff does recommend approval of this alternative site plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any questions of staff?
Mr. Chair? Jason, they say there's no reason for anybody but a Billion employee to be there, but they have a retail area space?
Yeah, and I think the applicant could speak a little bit more. I think I don't think it's for selling cars, but I'm not exactly sure what they're selling there, but.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Jason. Is a petitioner here?
Chad Riddell, Billion Automotive, 4025 South Plateau Trail, Sioux Falls. I really don't have a lot more to add to it. He kind of covered it for the most part. I know you have a question, and I'd be happy to answer that. The area that is showing retail is basically our area where we'll check in our cars, our used cars. We have to have an area where that will all come together, front of the building. And as he stated, it is for our trade-ins, the body shop, the mechanical service, and the cleanup is for our reconditioning of used cars.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, so what you're saying is that that retail space isn't for retail sales, it's for retail support?
Correct.
For off-site sales?
No, for our internal people, for our internal employees, because the cars will come and be dropped off at that location, like a used car, let's say, comes in and gets dropped off at that location, and that's where the reconditioning center is actually, and we have to have a place for them to drop that off and have it checked in, and that's what it's for.
Right, but all the sales happen at another site?
Yeah, no sales.
And as you're doing these projections of the number of employees within the building, is there any potential for multiple shifts working here or change of shifts?
We have no intention of that, and we don't foresee that. But you know, I can't say infinity-wise, but we have no intention of that. I mean, it's built with the long-term plan.
And then, if I may, how many additional cars would you see potentially coming here that would be parked in the lot and not yet worked on, or are those intended to be in that parking space? It's not really a defined parking lot, but the space to the north of the parking lot?
Basically would be a fenced-in area back behind the building. Could, hard to say, but it could house 100 vehicles. And that's back in behind the building in the fenced-in secured area. And it could be, you know, at any given time, it could be 150, I guess.
Okay.
Any other questions for Chad?
Good.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone from the audience that'd like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, need a motion in a second?
I move to approve item 17.
Second.
Discussion.
I think it's important to remember what Jason talked about being the specific stipulations of understanding between Billion and the city, and I just wanted to highlight that. I can't remember exactly how you said it, Jason, but you stated it well in your comments, so just want to make sure that's well understood among this group too.
Mr. Chair, I drove through this area and back behind the building, and it's an industrial area, and it's in a little bit of a rough shape. And so I think having Billions as a neighbor will hopefully improve the neighborhood a bit. And there is plenty of room back there, so
okay.
I would support this one.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of item 17 signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed, same sign. Item 17 passes.
Item 18, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the 2013 Shaped Places zoning ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls.
This is just a small amendment to really go along with the parking strip slash boulevard ordinance that was passed by council, I believe, last month. They did some changes to the intersection and driveway safety zone within that ordinance, and that's part of our zoning ordinance, so we need to take those through Planning Commission and City Council to get amended. The only changes is those two sections still refer to the downtown area as C3, which we all know that doesn't mean the downtown area anymore. So we are proposing to change that from C3 to the DT PUD. And then they're just adding a small section on the bottom here that discusses that permits need to be issued by the city engineer, so pretty minor stuff.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions of Jason or staff on this issue?
You're getting your workout today, Jason.
All right. Thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of item 18, signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. Item 18 passes. Any new business?
Mr. Chair, I would like to say one thing. I would like to thank Denny for his service on the Planning Commission, and we will greatly miss you.
I'll miss you guys.
Yes, we will.
Thank you. And with that, I'll ask for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Have to do that.
All in favor, signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed? Meeting adjourned.